Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 15 of the VonDubCast. My guest today is Reusch, and I think I was going to try this intro a little different today. A little shorter episode. I have just been asking the guests how long they'd be willing to do. I'm obviously a big fan, as you've heard from the podcast so far, about the long-form podcast format and what that brings and the power that holds, but I don't want to force somebody to sit here for 3 hours. So if they want to do 20 minutes, an hour, whatever, I'm good for anything. But a big piece of this when I started it was I wanted to have a podcast where I could get my thoughts out, and I always intended to have a solo aspect to it where I would just talk to the microphone by myself without a guest and kind of get my thoughts out. And I think I was scared of that, and I thought an easy way to jump in would be do it with guests, because I always have someone to bounce off of, and it just takes a little bit of the spotlight off of myself. And I think that it's time for me to jump back into it, and if it's important to me, I should do it. And I'm thinking that maybe on shorter interviews, adding a little piece of my own thoughts and feelings to this intro, make it another piece of content, is kind of the important way to go. And an important thing, and like I said in maybe the earlier podcast, I think when you see fear, it's very important to recognize that and dive into it and find why it scares you. And a lot of the times what's really important to your life and things you care about a lot are the things that are going to scare you when the thought of jumping into it is presented to you. And when you can train yourself to look for those things that scare you, and this is one of the things that scare me. I don't want to talk to this is way more scary. I'm sitting here trying to record this intro and actually make it a piece of content and put my thoughts out there, and it's way scarier than it is to sit down with even these guests that I'm so nervous for. As soon as I settle into those, I get used to them, and after the first 5 minutes, you're talking, and it's a conversation, it's easy. But this is a little bit different, and I'm probably going to end up re-recording this and hating it when I listen to it tomorrow. But I think the only way to get better at it is going to be to practice. So hopefully I can get some of the things out that I want to talk about this morning, and I'm drawing a little bit of a blank on even where I wanted to go. I had all these things running through my head last night as I was, scared to jump into this morning. But I guess I can start with giving you guys a little update on who the guest is and what they stand for, because I guess this is still going to be the intro, and I still need to do the job of that, even if I am going to try and make it more than that. My guest today is Reusch, and we discussed some really cool topics. I had probably a list of, I'd need probably 6 hours of a podcast with him to go over all the things I wanted to. I got to maybe a tenth of the things I wanted to discuss with him, and even that tenth was so enjoyable. And I think he's doing a really good job. He's a teacher in LA, and he's started a podcast and started an Instagram page, and he likes to go out of his way to start up conversations, even if they're a little bit taboo, or even if people are a little scared of doing them, which is very important. And I find that lots of the topics he's talking about are things that I've been trying to just tiptoe around on this podcast and not dive into fully, just because I didn't know if I was ready or if I had the right guest for it. But watching him, just doesn't matter if he has the right guest. He just does it himself like this. He's throws his Instagram onto him, just front facing camera, and just jumps in, and he even talks about how embarrassing that is, and how it's tough to do that on the podcast with me. But that I think that is a very important thing, and that courage to do really goes a long way, because it really impacted me when I saw him doing that. It kind of, why am I being such a pussy? And so I always need a guest to speak what I want. And then I'm finding that I'm talking over the guest, and I'm just so excited to get all this ideas out that I have that are just rattling around in my brain all week, and then I jump on a podcast and I just want to get them all out, and I'm not even letting my guests speak. So this is the form for it. This is where it needs to be. This is where those ideas need to come to fruition. I got to stop being such a coward and jump right into it. And that might take different forms. That might not always just be me talking. That might be eventually when I find someone to help me with this podcast that wants to be more involved. Maybe there'll be a sounding board that can just once a week bounce things off of and have a little, because that's my process. I need somebody to kind of argue with me and poke holes in my theories, because that's how I get better. And I found that that's why I'm so upset about the push towards not even be able to discuss touchy subjects, right? How are we going to ever move forward? Me personally, I need, actual discussion to move my ideas forward. And it seems like lately there's certain subjects that they just shut that right down. There can be no discussion. Just discussing them is bad in itself. And I just can't, I can't bring myself to to buy into that realization. That's kind of where my hill to die on is, and I think I'm finding a lot more people like Will who agrees with that and is pushing back against it, and he's just maybe a little further down the road than I am. He has been doing it, a couple years, where I've been doing it a couple months, and I think I need to, give myself the grace to understand that I'm still learning and building myself up to that point, so hopefully I can be just as brave as he is in a few years talking about these things that I want to, without being worried about what people are going to say or having to couch it in a bunch of different it seems like people are willing to talk about these issues if they can, have 20 minutes before to just give all these background of why they're not a bigot and they're not a racist and they're not a sexist and all these things, just to have these conversations about, complex topics that have a lot of taboos around them. But if you are a good person and you're trying to come at them from a place of compassion and love and trying to solve these and move these things forward, you shouldn't be worried about what people are going to say about them, because they're just, most of the time just mirroring their own issues onto you that you are, not afraid of, and trying to find within yourself actually doing the work instead of pretending to do the work and hiding behind these, social media movements that you don't actually do any work for. You just, post what you're supposed to post, right? Whatever it is on that day for whatever cause it is, that's all the work you do. You don't actually learn anything. You don't actually move forward. You don't actually, test your ideas against people, because that's, taboo. You just post what they want you to post, and now you've done your job. Now you're a social justice advocate. And that just doesn't sit with me. I want to discuss these. I want to move forward. I agree that these are issues, right? There's so many issues in the world. But if we just post about them and don't actually do anything, don't try to move our ideas forward on them, we're not going to get anywhere. And that's what was a big push for me to start this podcast. And that's what's pushing me towards finding people like Will that can come on this podcast. And he's willing to go wherever you want to go, because he's willing to, test his ideas, and he wants to be changed, right? Just like me, I love when people change my mind. It is one of my favorite things in the world when I am staunch on an idea and I think I have it fully thought out, and someone can come in and show me the error of my ways and have me jump on board with a new idea set. I love that. It's an immediate level up that someone just came in. It's like you can find these things in podcasts where, podcasts or lectures or schooling, whatever it is that change fundamentally how you think. And I think our biggest wealth of resources for the ability to change how people think are the people around us and conversation. And the more and more we get away from allowing people to have that conversation, we're losing our best tool in the fight against ignorance. So, yeah. So today's podcast was really interesting. And another area I want to use this podcast for is to show people the power of what podcasts can be and what this long form can be. It doesn't have to be me that changes your life. I don't think I will. I think there's a certain subset of people that might really click with what I'm saying, and I might be that right person for some people, but I'm not going to be for everybody. But I think there's a podcast that would change everybody's lives out there. There's probably 50 podcasts that would change people's lives for everybody out there in the world. You just don't know they're there, and you just don't have the avenues to find yourself there, because there's so many forces at work that aren't wanting you to change your life and take control. And I think if I can, show some of the ones that got me to this point where I wanted to start doing it for others, the Joe Rogans, the Brett Weinsteins, the Andrew Schultzes, the Joey Diaz's, right? These are the guys I talk about specifically on this podcast. I'll hear later, but I talk about Joey Diaz, who is he has a podcast and he's a comedian, and he grew up in the mean streets of New York. He lost both his parents at a young age. He was heavily into drugs. He was addicted to cocaine from the age of, 15 till 40 something. And he's 50 years old, and he has a kid, and he's come full circle, and he's an amazing speaker and orator. And you can learn so much from him. He teaches you these lessons that are lost in the world lately. And we discuss this a little further, but I think his podcast, for people that want to listen to, it's called The Church of What's Happening Now. And I think, if anybody wants to, he's also the funniest guy you will ever meet. So those lessons are just an added bonus. You go there, you laugh your ass off for an hour and a half at this amazing wild man that has these crazy cocaine-fueled stories for most of his life of just, robbing and breaking the rules to get by, and just, it's amazing. And to see what he is now, it's such a redemptive story and so amazing. And I think the best jump-off point, there's another podcast I really like. It's called The Honeydew with Ryan Sickler. He takes people on and talks about the lowest points in their lives and how they got through it. And I think it's just it's almost the antithesis to what social media is where they show just the highlights and the highlights. And what Ryan Sickler on the Honeydew always talks about is we're highlighting the lowlights. And it's very important. And he's been having Joey on over the past couple months to kind of recap his lowlights, but his whole life is lowlights until he found comedy. And even then it wasn't all daisies, but they're going through, they'll do an hour and a half on his years of 14 to 16 it's because of how crazy his life is. They're just going through, I think they're at 1986 now. They just, they'll do like 16 months at a crack and tell all the stories with him, because Joey has this amazing memory, and I just think that's an amazing jumping off point if people wanted to check him out. Who else do we talk about on this podcast? Oh, Andrew Schultz, probably the funniest comedian of the new generation that's, putting all his stuff out for free on YouTube. He's really changing the game. Comedy used to be really gated by, Comedy Central and HBO. If you wanted to get a special, you had to really follow the rules, and he bucked that trend when nobody wanted his content a few years back and started putting it out for free on YouTube, and he's blown up, and he's so goddamn funny and so pointed and flagrant. His podcast is called Flagrant 2. It's a little bit of sports, a little bit of funny, but they push the envelope. If you're tired of hearing comedy just be so safe and so nerfed out left, right, and center, go to the Flagrant 2 podcast and listen to Andrew Schultz. Follow him. He's also doing these 5-minute monologues on Instagram TV. I just posted about it on the Instagram account for the VonDubCast, and check them out. They're 5 minutes. He does them every Saturday, and they are absolutely brilliant. They attack the right, they attack the left. They just go for the funniest takes on everything. They say they want to take the politics out of comedy, and just what's funny is funny, and it is brilliant. He is so smart and changing the game in so many ways, and I think that's somewhere, right? That's just another podcast that you guys could check out, and maybe that'll be the one that connects with you. And there's lessons to be learned with him, maybe not as poignant as the Joey Diaz lessons, but just to watch him and the other people on the podcast, take these really touchy subjects and just try and talk, do not get bogged down in the taboos and just find the funniest take you can find on all these. And a lot of truth comes out in them too, right? And a lot of hypocrisy of, how we walk through the world and these stupid games we play, and just they blast right through them with comedy as their tool. And it's just amazing to see. Who else? What else comedians we talk about or influential? Oh, yes, there we go. Later in the podcast, you'll hear me refer to an organization or an idea called Unity 2020. It's something I've talked about on the podcast before, but it's a third option to the two-party system in the States, and it's really beautiful, and it comes from a really beautiful place. And I just wanted to give a little bit of background on the people who are starting it. It's Brett and Heather Weinstein, Harvey Weinstein. Yeah, it's the opposite of whatever Weinstein is, the reverse of that. So Weinstein. Brett Weinstein and his wife Heather have an amazing podcast called the Dark Horse Podcast. They're both evolutionary biologists, and they have a really long and interesting story, and I really encourage people to check it out. Brett started at a really high, I can't remember what college it was, but it was a really high-level university in the States, but he had to leave because he was a whistleblower on some really I can't remember exactly what it was. I think maybe some frat houses were doing some things with women that he didn't agree with, and he blew the whistle on them and actually ended up winning an award for the work he did for women's rights through all that. And he ended up at a small college called Evergreen College. It was very progressive. It was schooling, but it was just up to the professors. They just let hopefully the idea is to have smart people just take 40 kids at a time and take them through a curriculum with no context, right? You get them all day and just teach them what you want and see what comes out of it. And with someone like Brett and Heather, they can do that, and they can bring their ideas forward with evolutionary biology, which is both of their fields, and just have these really, really deep connections with their students where they can show them not only the lecture material but life material and what you want to be and how these things interact, because they're not separate, they're not silos that don't interact with each other. What you're learning should be it should have an impact on how you live your life and how it educates your worldview, and I think that's what they did with it. But you have these other professors that it's completely that way of thinking is completely determinant on the content of the person leading the classroom. And I think someone like Brett would do an amazing job. Anyways, I have a point to this, I promise. So Brett was at Evergreen College, and he didn't agree with a certain policy. It was a policy where they said it was all the white people stay home for a day or whatever, right? This is in Portland. It's a very left-wing progressive place. And he disagreed and said, no, I'm not going to participate in that. I'm going to come to class. I have my students, and I agree with that racism is a problem, and I don't think that this is a solution. I think this is actually an idea that the heart is in the right place, but is actually, in fact, it is racist, right? Profiling people by the color of their skin for allowing them into a campus is, quite clearly racist. And just, I'm not going to get involved with this. I support what you guys are going for, but I think you guys are off on this. And then the entire campus seemed to lose its mind because he wasn't complying, and they ended up chasing him down, him and his family, with baseball bats, trying to find him on this campus. They had to run. It ended up in a lawsuit because the leader of the school pretty much told, completely kowtowed to the mob and, allowed this all to happen under their watch, and it ended up in a lawsuit, and I think they won some money. But anyways, what I'm saying is these people always are trying to do what's right, and they got run out, and they've been, through these types of issues, they're seeing this issue come up, and how this, you have to get on board with our ideas, and how, and more so than the ideas themselves, but our chosen route of fixing them, or you are automatically a bigot or a racist. And they see the issue in this. They see the way that things are going and the dangerous course that this plots, and they are doing something to change it. And I've been following them for a little while now, just because they always have really balanced takes on it. It always comes from a compassionate place, and they really seem to want to do good. So they caught my eye. And then a couple months back, I was really in a dark place in terms of both the American and the Canadian political system, where it just seemed like there was no way out. There was no voice of the people in it. It was all just these special interest groups and big corporations that control everything in from the media to the actual policies being enacted, and there was no will of the people anymore. And I just didn't see a way out because they're too entrenched and too powerful. And I just wish that there was a way you could have a revolution, but all revolutions up until this point have been violent, and there's never been another way. And I was thinking, man, it's 2020. I wish there was. We have so much technology and so much intellectual horsepower that is being, just sidelined because these are the people that are scared to speak up and not kowtow, but just, this is the way things are going, and I don't think there's much we can do about it. And they just kind of sat in silence waiting for someone to do something. And then they came out with this plan called the Unity 2020. And it is an idea where it seems that politicians, and I think this goes to all power positions, right? Whether that is a cop, whether that is a politician, anywhere that by doing the job, by no merit of your own or capabilities, you are enacted power if you can gain that job, right? And I think that is an issue because it makes it so that these jobs, any job with power, you would want to have the most people, the people that would have the most respect for it, the people that are most capable, that you would trust the most with that power. But in fact, because something like politics where you are elected, you don't have to show any capabilities. If you can get enough people to vote for you, you're in. And, police is not the same thing, but I think that's why there's so many things in place to try and prevent the wrong people from getting into these jobs, because the people that want that type of power are usually not the people that should have that type of power. And there's exceptions to every rule, but I guess there is I don't think that there's any exceptions in politics. I think there is at the bottom, but once you get to a certain point, you cannot escalate any further unless you are corruptible. There's certain monetary barriers and power barriers that are in place so that if you are not corruptible and you won't take money from certain areas, you will not progress any further than you will. And this is what I was so upset about, is just, well, how do we ever stop that? And this Unity 2020, it's an idea where they, instead of having people come in and apply for the position, they want to find a way to conscript somebody, right? Just like when World War II happened and we needed to, have a conscription for the war, it's almost a conscription to lead. We the people of America are calling upon you to lead us. I know you might not want to, you might, but that's not what it's about. It's about, we are asking for you to come in, right? And this would be a third option. I think it is a very delicate game that they have to play, because if you make this play too early, there's all these legacy power structures that can tear it down. And if you make the play too late, you miss your boat. And I think that's what they're trying to find right now. And they're doing these live long form podcasts with people that can vote and try and swing the discussion the way with the way they're voting. And it's really special to see. I encourage everyone to check them out. They're on Brett Weinstein's YouTube channel, and they're called Unity 2020 Campfires. And he just brings on smart, patriotic people, and that's the basis of. I can't remember the three pillars I want. I know one was capability, because right now there's no capability, and they're actually disincentivized from capable people in politics, because those are the people that won't play the game, right? You want people that, or it doesn't matter how capable they are, right? That's not what they're actually trying to get. And I think that's what they're trying to reverse. And then also patriotic, and what's going to do what's right, not do what's right for the people that are paying you, or what's right for these pharmaceutical companies, right? It's what's right for the actual people in the best way that you can understand it. And I think it's very important, and people can hide, if you're only on for 15 minutes or if you're on for more than 15 minutes or 5 minutes, you have a script to follow or a teleprompter to say what you want to say. That's not what we need from leadership. We need people that believe in their ideas enough that they aren't scared to go on a podcast for 3 hours and talk because they might say something wrong. Because if they did say something wrong and people showed them, they'd be okay with changing their mind. But we can't have that in our society right now as it stands. And that is what's stopping us from getting actual leaders in these leadership positions. So this idea has just been super special for me to watch. I don't know if it's going to be successful this year, and I know I'm Canadian and most people listening to this are Canadian, but you have to understand that Canada and America are inextricably linked, and whatever happens there happens here to a lesser degree. And if they are going to be walking themselves to the brink, they are bringing us along with them, and we have to understand that. And then I think this is just a cool template for modern democracy. Why not have people, find every way you can to bring the will of the people? That's what the democratic process is supposed to be. It's supposed to be, what is the best way we can make the will of the people readily available, right? And somehow we've made these crazy technological leaps in everywhere but politics. And I think that's for a reason. And I think this is maybe the first thing I've ever seen that could change that and could right that balance. So I think it's very interesting. I don't know if it'll interest everybody else, but I just think it's an idea that is cool to at least get into the zeitgeist, and hopefully it catches on and catches some power, even if they don't, change it. I mean, in a perfect world, this really catches fire, people get behind it, and it saves us from either a Trump or a Biden. And I think that is just, to me, that doesn't even matter. Whoever the leader of that party is, if you get that far, you are corrupted already, and you're already within that system. And that's why we're trying to find another one, right? And then he has a couple cool ideas right off the start, like ranked choice voting. If people want to look into that, it's an immediate change that they can make to the democratic process that would make it much more even. A lot of other countries have already done this, but it takes away a lot of the power of the two parties if they do have ranked choice voting. And that's one of the things Unity 2020 said that would be the first thing on the docket, would be to change that. So even if it is only a one-off time, we'd at least have that forever to be their legacy. And that alone would be a game changer if you really read into it and understand the impact of what ranked choice voting could be. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure that you guys had the background of Brett and Heather and their Dark Horse podcast, because I think that's where, just lately, because this is one of the things that's kind of grabbed my attention, and my attention flits from subject to subject. But the last couple of months have been really bogged down on this, just because of all the, with coronavirus and all this thing pushing us to the brink. I think we need real leadership, and watching the leadership we have here in Canada, and I think the same issue we have up here, right? There's no will of the people, and if you think our leadership federally in Canada isn't just as compromised and just as in the pocket of these industries, and you can't tell that by the response to something like this, we got a real problem here too. And I think we're on different schedules in terms of elections than the States, but I think we need to be already ramping up and seeing what new options we have to bring forward to our next election. That doesn't, if we get stuck between two candidates and two parties that we're not satisfied for, we need another party that can, somehow harness this amazing will of the people that is there and is the undercurrent, but just has no tangible way to bring it forward. And I think this could be it. And I think that just wanted to let you guys know where some of these ideas I'm getting are coming from. And I think if you want to, I think every intro of that I want to do like this, I want to give a couple different podcasts that people can jump on, because I listen to so many, and there's so many that have changed my life. And like I said at the start, this podcast doesn't have to be the one that does it for you. You know, I might not connect with every person, so if one of these other ones can be, I would love to keep opening the door to it. And that's what that Twitter page is for, right? Everyone I followed on Twitter, I went through all my podcasts and all the people that I listen to that I really trust and that I feel confident giving my stamp of approval, and I followed them all on the Twitter page. I'm not going to follow anybody else. So if you want to go there and just peruse through the follows on the VonDubCast Twitter page, that's what I made it for. And that is why, you know, just in passing, if I talk about, you know, what Joey, and obviously I'm elaborating here, and you'll hear it later in the podcast, kind of how I got to, you know, Joey and Andrew Schultz and the Weinsteins and all those kind of things. But then if you do want to do a little digging, at least that's a first step where pretty much, if I talk about it on the podcast and you go to the Twitter page and he's there, that's someone I have my full, you know, seal of approval. I promise you they will give you something that is of value, because these are the people that I've, you know, gotten a lot of my newfound values from. And yeah, so I think that's very exciting. And yeah, what else did I want to cover on this little thing? And please feel free to give me any feedback on that. I mean, this is kind of a scary little thing for me to do, just talk right into the microphone, but I'm going to have to get better at it. So let me know what you think of this. Is this just annoying? You just want me to get right to the interviews? Maybe I'll find a different way where I, you know, separate this out into its own little format somehow or whatever. But I'm loving the feedback. Like I say, I learn from things that people don't like, and I like to be able to defend my position. So please let me know what you do like, what you don't like. Please follow the Instagram and Twitter pages. Like I said, I don't like social media. I don't like what it does to people, and I don't like what it creates, but it is a key way that I'm going to need to spread this podcast and to grow this podcast, to see more people and spread that message about, you know, using social media in a healthy way. And I hope I can, you know, use these VonDubcasts as kind of a template for showing the good and the bad, and not falling into some of the traps and some of the hatred and the cesspool that, you know, something like Twitter can be, and show people that that's not what the real world is like. It's not everyone that's out to get each other, and there's knives at your neck everywhere you turn. You know, there's a lot more love in the world. There's a lot more compassion. There's a lot more forgiveness when you know, stop listening to the fear mongering that's being shouted at you, and there's no blame. And if you see that you wake up to that and you still see other people are, give them a little bit of forgiveness, give them a little bit of compassion, try and put yourself in their shoes, and imagine if you were being bombarded with that hate mongering and that fear mongering, and that, you know, if they don't agree with you 100%, they are the worst vile amount of people, and they're dehumanized. And that's what scares me more than any of this, is the dehumanization of the other. That is the first step towards every real catastrophic event. Every genocide, every war is always preceded by the dehumanization of the other, so that you can go and fight them. It's a natural evolutionary thing, but we're using these very dangerous things. We're playing games with dangerous ideas right now, and that is what scares me. And I think if you hear that or you see that in any others, just try and, you know, do whatever you can to make a good example of, you know, keeping that compassion, not just listen to everybody, even if it's someone you disagree, especially when it's someone you disagree with. Give them the space to listen to them and see if you can take anything of value. And if you can't take anything of value, maybe it's something wrong with your own thinking. And if not, maybe that is a case where you need to do your best to help them see the error of the ways in a calm and compassionate way. And if you can't, you can't. But it's just about, as we go through the world, trying to spread what we'd like to see in the world, really, when it breaks down. So yeah, let me know what you think of this. I don't know if this is silly or whatever it is, but it's something that is important to me, and I thought I'd try it out, and it actually didn't work out too bad, because I've been bullshitting for half an hour here. Holy Christ. Yeah, so I better get to this interview. I really enjoyed it. Will's a really smart guy. I've such a disappointment in the education system, top to bottom, and to see someone like Will really trying to do real education and really make an impact on kids, and go take it further to, you know, teachers work hard, and then to come home and, you know, record a podcast and put all this stuff that he's putting on his Instagram and doing all that. That's a hard work, and it really shows that he really wants to make a difference. And yeah, I think if you check out his Instagram page, you'll find some really, really cool stuff. And I really hope you enjoy the talk we had. Like I said, I got to maybe, you know, 5% of what I really wanted to. I had so many ideas that I wanted to get to, right? I really wanted to have a deep dive on Unity 2020 with him, because I knew he had a little bit of background on it, and he's the first person I've been able to talk to that, you know, has knowledge of it. And that's what's frustrating with this, is I listen to all these podcasts and I hear all these really cool stories that really get my juices going, and nobody else in my circle of people I can get in contact with have any idea about them. And I just feel alone. And I feel like when I can come on here and talk to you guys about them, it might be talking to myself, but eventually, maybe someone will do the work. They will hop on the Dark Horse podcast and listen to these things that Brett and Heather are saying, and then I can have a discussion with you after the fact. And that's the thing. If you guys hear anything on here that sparks your interest or is a topic that you want to discuss, reach out to me. I'd love to have these discussions with more people, right? This is a big part of what this podcast was for me, was to try and send out the tendrils to my circle in a larger area, right? Not just my immediate, really close family, but to the people that might just give it a shot to listen to this and find that it connects, and then wants to reach out and have on. And don't be scared to come. Everyone has a story. If you want to come on the podcast, and you don't have to have an idea, or you just connect with the long form or whatever it is, reach out. I just want to see this grow, and I want to see people grow with it. And I don't want to. This was a cure for loneliness at the very basis of what it was for me. It was a cure for loneliness, and I moved to Grand Prairie, and I was by myself, and I had my girlfriend up here every once in a while, but she was doing her master's, so she was long distance, would only come up for a couple months out of the year, and we'd see each other, maybe once a month, and the rest of it was just me and podcasts, and that was a good stopgap. But now that I can start this, I want to be on the opposite side of that. I don't want to be that one lonely rock that is reaching out to all these big podcasts and getting my cup filled from that. I want to be that for other people, and I want to have this be able to build long-lasting relationships. And that's something like this discussion with Will. I think this is going to be someone I reach out and test my ideas against, and hopefully help him learn as well throughout our lives. And I just hope that this can build relationships and help you guys find new areas to better yourselves, and find people that you can connect with, right? And if one person finds another podcast that they connect with and can change something in them for the better, then this is all worth it. So yeah, again, let me know what you think. I think I've tried to end this and then thought of another thing I wanted to talk about 6 times here, but I'll just cut it before I can interrupt myself somehow. How many people you guys think can manage to not only interrupt my guests this much, but then when I get on by myself, I find out I can't even interrupt my own train of thought, and my own attempts to end this is just interrupted too. Man, I don't know. I'm going to choose to think of that as a skill that only I possess, and not a downfall. Anyways, sorry guys. I'll finally play the intro music and get you to it. Let me know what you think. Bye. All right. Thanks, everybody. Our guest today is Will Reusch, or Reusch. How do you pronounce your name?
Reusch. Yeah, you're right.
Reusch. Perfect. Nailed it on the first try. And Will, I've been following on Instagram, and he's very courageous. And I think that's probably the main thing that stuck out to me. There's lots of topics that people these days are afraid to get into and afraid to talk about. And Will seems to just dive right into them with compassion and respect that takes away a lot of the taboos and the easy attack vectors that people like to jump on right away, and just kind of dispels those, and is willing to have a conversation, and really tries to create a space of open conversation, very similar to what I'm doing here. So when I started to see what you were doing, Will, it really clicked with the message I was trying to send, and I knew we had to sit down and get onto one of these eventually and hear what you have to say on some of these subjects I've been kicking around.
Oh, I love it. Thank you for inviting me, man. It's very cool to be able to connect. We were just talking a little bit before we were recording, like connect with people that are seeing the world the way that you are, because we're a little odd, but
yeah,
but
definitely a lot.
Maybe we're not as odd as we think.
Oh, of course. And just for people that don't know, you're an educator. You've been teaching for how long now?
15 or 16 years.
Wow.
You're 16 years.
Man, you look young for that. I wouldn't have guessed that.
Yeah. I'm 30. I'm going to be 38 in like a week or two. So
wow.
I taught did student teaching in rural Pennsylvania, and then also in Philadelphia. And then I moved out to LA, and I taught in very diverse different situations in LA for, something like 14 years in LA and then 2 years in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, so I figured just before we get into that, I have a bunch of questions and a bunch of theories kind of on education that I've been kicking around and looking for the right kind of guests to dive into them to just see if they hold any water. And I think maybe before that, I'll just give you a little background on kind of my educational experience. So I grew up in rural Alberta in Canada, up north in the oil and gas industry in a small town of 7,000 people. Went through all my grade school there and then went off to university in the University of Alberta, got a business degree there. And after the fact, I think going through it, I didn't realize a lot of the things, but now once I left university, I kind of found podcasts and found that I got way more education from podcasts than I did in probably all those 16, 17 years of education crammed together. In the next 2 years, I learned more and more real things and people that were scared to say a lot of the things that you talk about. And I just was, really deflated for a long time and kind of disappointed by that fact. But then have recently flipped that around of just how amazing that was of that education I could get and trying to spread that to other people. And that's kind of the message I want to send. Maybe my podcast won't resonate with everybody, but if I can open people up to the medium and getting them to listening to some more long form conversation where I feel like you can get past those first, 5 minutes that everyone gets stuck in that loop with, it seems all the time. And, I'm just seeing so many of the things that I saw mainly in university that really scared me. Some indoctrination, some almost brainwashing, and I fell right into it, hook, line, and sinker, right? And I was all these messages that I find so scary now. I was the one screaming them out from the rooftops, right? Calling people down, going after people for anger for what they say, even without a hint of compassion of where they might come from, trying to put myself in their shoes, and then coming out of that and kind of seeing where I was and just being, oh, there are good pieces of it, and some of this is coming from a good place, but it's somewhere between that and the way it's being brought out to the community. There's some disconnect there that it's losing that sense of compassion that it's starting in, and it's coming out in that way. And I just feel like the way you articulate some of these things and just how brave it is to go after them and say them without force or say them with force, it really invigorates me to do it, because I feel like some of the things you're saying I want to be saying, and I just feel like I'm almost not comfortable yet, but I want to get there. But just to see you already be there and just fearlessly, whatever it is, whatever the topic of the day is, you jump into it without the fear of what people are going to say. And I just I'm curious where that comes from. Where does that courageousness and that seeming fearlessness of the outcomes come from?
Well, thank you for that. It's a very kind thing to say, and I actually get that a lot. And this isn't me being humble. Like, it doesn't feel courageous. I mean, sometimes I guess I could see that, but like, I'm an open book. Like, I think that I'm solid in my real intentions to do good.
Mm-hmm.
I was raised, I guess, with like, be a good person type of stuff. And,
right.
And I think that if you mean well, then it gives you a lot of like power to kind of push your ideas and stuff. But
right.
then if you mean well, then you should be open-minded too. So I think that like the whole road to hell is paved in good intentions. I talk about that a lot, and I believe that. So you have to really do the stuff of like inner work or whatever you want to call it, like become self-aware. I challenge myself a lot, and when I think I have a good idea, I'm constantly trying to prove it wrong, constantly trying to seek disconfirmation, because I don't want to have bad ideas. It's not just saying I have good intentions, or not just, I don't want to appear to be good. I really don't. I don't want people to say, I mean, it's nice to hear, I guess, but like, I'm not doing this to be viewed as being a good person. I'm not. I'm doing this to try and do good. And I think that's a really important difference.
Right. And I think that that's very similar to myself and kind of how I want to get there. And I feel like this podcast, if I feel like I want to get a base, I feel like I was kind of dancing around some subjects that I have strong feelings on, but right now I want to build up that base of where I come from and my ideas and how I generate my ideas and how they all are coming from that place. And I feel like once I have that established, that all the time, I'm just trying, exactly like you, I'm just trying to better my ideas, and I want people to disagree, and I want to find that. And I feel like it's just that combination of believing in yourself that you are coming from a good place. And like you just already said, being able to keep that in mind all the time, that you might be wrong and you want to be wrong. I love being wrong, right? I love when someone comes through and changes my mind. It's hard to change my mind. I'm very stubborn and I'm very strong in my beliefs, but because of that, that gives me the power that when someone can change them, I'm totally 100% willing to jump all in and change my mindset and help better my ideas so that now I'm not bringing forward poor ideas. And I think that's something that I see in you, and really drew me to your content, and makes me want to amplify your voice and make sure that people that within my circle, and just because right now this podcast is mainly just people that I know and people that I'm close to, but that's the people I care most about. That's the people I want to be getting honest messaging. It seems like all the messaging going on now is completely biased, and all have their own agendas attached, and it's so hard to just find true honest voices that are just trying to spread good and spread honest intentions. And I feel like the more I can amplify those voices in my immediate circle now, and if it ever grows to a bigger circle eventually, that'd be great too. But I just think that's such an important piece, and those voices need to be amplified as much as possible. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. It's strange though, Nick. Like why is it that people don't want to try and actually do well? And so I go down, so I ask a question like that, like why is
Yes.
it that people aren't interested in actually doing well? And then that's how it gets into all of the social psychology stuff. And you know, I did deep work into like Jonathan Haidt stuff and Jordan Peterson stuff, and like,
Yep.
you know, I mean, you know, all of this. I just like that. I ask a question and then I just look for the answer over and over and over again. There's a lot of reasons why someone doesn't do the work, but it's also really hard. So that's why I love like David Goggins or Jocko Willink. It's just like do the hard stuff, you know, Wim Hof, you know, like get in that ice bath. So what would be the equivalent be of getting in an ice bath for like your mindset? It's like doing the stuff that you really don't want to do. You know, I just posted Willful Ignorance, and it's everywhere. So it just doesn't make sense. It seems such like a better way to orient your life than to just like stick with one idea than just to be like, I'm gonna try and fight for the best ideas. And I'm like you, man. I'm stubborn because I think I have a good idea and I'll defend it. But as soon as someone like shows the error of my ways, you probably do too. I'm all right, gone. And now my old mindset's gone. I'm adapting this. And it's such a knowledge hack too, because I'll have this idea like this is a good idea, and then I'll talk to someone will say something like, you know, well, I've been studying this for 30 years, and let me explain it to you, blah 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 blah, and then I just go, oh, well done. You just saved me 30 years of education. Thanks. You know,
Exactly.
Like, it's such a better way. Open-mindedness is the Enlightenment principles are just a better way to get educated, and that's the stuff I think that we're fighting for, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think one of the big issues I see is how much in life you see very easy paths laid out for people, and almost an infantilization. And I feel like education is a huge part, right? I saw it very firsthand in university, just how much they were treating you like just a small child the whole way through. Wouldn't let you do anything that went anything away from the norms. And I didn't realize that high school seemed that way as well, but it seemed almost that was the point of school. You are children, you're treated like children, and it bugged me. I hated school. I was that difficult child. I was the worst on my teacher. And I look back now and I feel so bad for it. And that's why I was so curious to talk to an educator, because I just think what a nightmare I used to be in class. But I feel like it was rebelling against that. You need to, I feel like at each stage of development, school and the real world, and school is supposed to be an equivalent for the real world and preparing you for the real world. It's tough, right? When you're 10 years old, you need to be dealing with like 14-year-old problems almost to prepare yourself for those next steps in development. And then university is supposed to be that last step of this is the real world, and it was nothing like the real world. And as soon as you graduate, you see that, and it's such this disconnect. Why did I just pay all this money for all this training that's supposed to prepare me for this world, and I'm walking out and now nobody's holding my hand anymore, right? So everyone reverts back, because at no point throughout that whole process were you ever forced off of the easy path. And I feel like that internal work that you referred to earlier is the hardest thing you can do, right? Looking within yourself and trying to better yourself is the scariest. You will have so many security blankets around you that prevent you from doing that. And it's such a scary thing to take on that if you have any excuse or anything that goes the other way, you're going to jump on that path right away. And so much of culture is trying to do that, because if you don't do that easy work, you don't ask questions. You just go along with the path, and that's what people want more or less. And I think that there's multiple different ways that you can get there, even if you do go through the entire education system. Just like myself, it took me getting into podcasts and hearing that and getting that message from another station almost. But it's less about the knowledge you're getting. It's more about teaching somebody to do the right thing, to be courageous, to act when you need. And I think those are the things that are missing. And you can listen to someone that's not even a traditional educator, or a traditional podcast that is with the goal of educating. You can listen to someone. I don't know if you've ever heard of Joey Diaz. He's a comedian. He's from LA, right?
Yeah,
And
I've seen
he
a lot
has
of
one.
podcasts.
Yeah, but if you look at his story, he had just one of the most horrific upbringings, went through so much stuff. And if anybody knows the hard path, it's him. And not traditional education by any means, but the lessons that you can take from someone like him
Mhm.
is incredible, right? And it's not your traditional learning of, facts, and it's not your biology, your physics, but it's real life lessons that are so important. And there's no facsimile for that throughout the traditional education system for those lessons that he's teaching that usually you would get through life, because life was hard enough. Even 50 years ago, those lessons didn't need to be taught in school because life was hard. Life is still hard for everybody, but it was extremely hard before the advent of the internet, right? I'm 26 years old. My life got pretty easy pretty quick.
Mhm.
Right? Like I never had to struggle. Even when you compare my parents to my struggle, it's so much different. These lessons were handed out all over in life. You were going to get your ass kicked up and down sideways. But now we take this period from, K to 12. And then if you go to university, same thing. We're insulating you away from that. And now you come out and you have no skills. You have skills, but not the right skills. And you flounder, and you get scared, and you just look for the easy path to get back onto it so that you can get away from life kicking you in the ass all the time. But I think that's important. I feel like that's such a degradation. That's why wanted to talk to you about, do you see the same thing? And do you have ideas for how we can bring that back into the traditional education system, those kind of values, so that we're not just teaching facts and if you can pass a test, you know what I'm saying?
I do. Yeah. So the way I was just doing, I was just a teacher, and I was doing cool stuff in my classes. But my wife, so there's like different, like I have a podcast. My wife does like a beauty business marketing podcast because she has
Mm-hmm.
a salon where she does like permanent makeup, and
Right.
and she does a lot of like online marketing. She's like, why don't you put what you're doing in your classes online? And I was really hesitant to. I feel weird holding my phone up and talking to it. I just feel
Yeah.
douchey. It feels weird. The idea of like looking for likes and follows. I didn't do social media before this.
I know.
Gross. But my wife is a Filipino immigrant, and she never went to college, barely got through high school. She's not like book smart,
Mm-hmm.
but she built a very successful salon, and now she's building a successful online, beauty business, coaching business. And what's interesting is I have taught in very different schools, and I've taught at like private school in LA where the kids go on to Ivy League,
Right.
UPenn and Princeton and stuff like that. And I've seen her engage with people who have like a USC marketing degree, and they have this degree from a prestigious university in marketing, and they don't know the first thing about marketing, where my wife does. She built a salon and then started with like dressing up and going door to door down Ventura Boulevard, handing out business cards and pretending like they were successful when they didn't have any clients yet. And she just grew out of a necessity. So it's what you're saying. It's like when Jocko Willink and Jordan Peterson sat down and they were talking about life and being a man and all this kind of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
like Jordan Peterson is very much the academic world. Jocko Willink is the battlefield, and yet they came to the same conclusions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that to answer your question, I think what school needs to be is not theoretical. It's all theoretical. The reason why school sucks is we're saying learn about physics as this person. You sit in a chair and someone writes on a whiteboard about physics. Instead of, we have a problem in this community, let's fix it. What physics are needed to fix it? Like school should be basically using kids as intellectual labor. Like it should be like when you need to have a problem that you need to solve. It's like, how do you figure out how a car engine works? You pop the hood. You get under there when your car breaks down and you find a way to fix it. With my kids, I have a 3 and a 5-year-old. When they have a problem, I mean, unless it's, when it's like a 3 or 5-year-old problem, I'm always like, well, fix it. Figure it out. And that's not what school is. And that's why you probably hated school. It's why I hated school. It's why a lot of kids hate school, is it's all theory.
Yeah.
But then you go in the real world and you're like, well, according to the theory, this is supposed to work. I've talked to people who are like managing consultants. And one of the things that this guy was a managing consultant for like 20 years, goes into businesses and tells them how to run their business, never owned a business. And he said things like, if you treat your employees well, they will treat you well. And it was
Yes.
said that around my wife and then friends of ours who own another like salon type business, and they just started laughing. They were like, "Oh my gosh, do you like? We paid for this girl to go to college. We gave her a place to live when her boyfriend was beating her. We like, and she, stole from the register. Like,
Yeah.
no, that's in theory that might be the way it works, but no, that's not the way it
Oh.
works at all. And so that's what school is. School is
Mhm.
here's when this happens, you do this. When this happens, you do this. Yes, sometimes, but until you have to actually figure it out, you're not paying attention. Let's get school to be, let's actually solve problems. There are a lot of problems. Clearly, look at what's happening right now with civil unrest. There are problems that
Mhm.
need to be fixed. That's going to require communication skills. That's English class. It's going to
Yeah.
require understanding what happened in the past, successes and failures. That's history class. It's going to take math and sciences to try and, what does the actual practical rollout look like? That's
Mhm.
what school should be, I think. But it's
Yeah.
not.
It's not at all, and something that I have so many ways I can go. I have to start writing my notes here because I have so many different avenues that just open up where I want to go with it. But something that struck me the other day, there was a podcast between Eric and Brett Weinstein. Careful with that one; that's a loaded one there. And Brett was trying to explain to Eric. Eric is a mathematician who has his own kind of theory of everything, and he really struggles with the fact that people, it's so clear to him, and he's such a high intellect that he struggles with the fact that people can't understand some of the things he's saying and why physics isn't more easily graspable. And something that Brett said in response and trying to kind of talk him down from that standpoint really hit me in a deep spot. He was talking about, fermions and bosons, and why is that so hard to remember when people can remember what, I can't remember what they compared it to, but just use hockey statistics. Is because when you learn, I've attempted to learn about physics and the fermions and the bosons, and I do better at this age when you have something to tie it to. But he's saying when you learn a piece of information in isolation, it's like an isolated cell in your brain. It's a neural patch that is not connected to anything, so it never gets use, and it just fades away because you have more use for it. When you don't attach these ideas to anything else, you're just learning them because you're forced to learn them. They don't attach to anything, and they don't actually stick, and you don't remember anything, right? And then you hear an educator like Brett when he's on his Dark Horse podcast with his wife Heather, which is probably my number one podcast right now. I can't
Agreed.
give anything higher than that. And they speak so eloquently about the art of teaching and the art of getting people excited and all these theories. If you understand them enough to show them why they're going to be useful to them. I remember asking all the time, when will I ever have to use this? Why do I have to know this to my teachers? All the time I would ask that, and they would never have a good answer. And I don't blame them, right? There's so many issues with the resources we give to teachers already, right? It's not a high enough role in my understanding of what it needs to be held to, because that is the requirement of them. If you want this knowledge to stick, instead of just being something you can pass a test and you forget it the next week, you need to get them excited about it. And I just thought that was such an important thing that it seems so obvious, but I'd never heard it articulated the way where it hit me like that of, oh, that's so obvious. And I've been applying that to my life and how I'm trying to learn things now. And if I want to learn something, of trying to, keep it in activation and find ways to bring it back into my life. And it's just been a game changer for myself.
I'll actually even tack on to that.
Yeah.
And the Weinstein brothers are awesome.
Oh.
I had a conversation with Brett, like 2 or 3 years ago, and then Eric's
so
been
jealous
of everything that I'm doing on my Instagram and everything. So he's,
wow.
I think that they're important voices right now.
Of course they are.
I'm even like one-upping like that idea. It's not just like the isolated bits of information. It's who does well with isolated bits of information. Certain types of people, certain brains, and those are the kids get into the good colleges and get the good positions. They're not innovators. They're like robots. They're workhorses, and that's not innovation. And I think that when you look at the major institutions and how they're failing, media and politics, and I mean, even just so much is just crumbling right now. Academia, they're not people who are thinking about what they're doing. Because again, they're taking all this like information. They know stuff, but they're not connecting it with like, how is this going to affect this, then this, then this, and this? They're not playing out the whole chain reaction because that's not the way that they learn things. So it's actually leading to a lot of the problems that are, revealing themselves right now in our world.
Right.
I think it's because of the way that they learn this stuff. I mean, among many other things, but not connecting this to it's short term. This will bump the stock price a little bit. This will do that. Whatever it might be, it'll get us across this finish line. And then what's after that? I don't know.
Mhm.
You know, it's kind of like Trump. It's like Trump's like going to be touting about the stock market. Stock market's good, but what does that mean? You know,
Mhm.
if my transmission is making noise and I fill it up with sawdust, did I fix the transmission?
Fix
You
the
know what I mean?
noise. Yeah.
Yeah, like or like the smoke alarm's going off. So what do? You just you take the batteries out. Like maybe there's a fire.
Right.
And that can go to people's anxiety, SSRI, antidepressant use. That can go through so many things in society. This like short answer stuff. I think
Mhm.
part of that is because of what you're saying. The way that the education system is working is we're not understanding the system, the whole
Right.
system, and how that works. Yeah.
And maybe this is the right time for me to run one of my theories by you of I have an idea about education, about something, and it's very personal to my experience that I went through. And I feel like there's such a wealth of untapped resources in the podcast world already.
Mm-hmm.
And I have this idea of if we can get certain minds together to assemble their university degree of podcasts, if you just made, they could be 10 podcasts, 100 podcasts, whatever you wanted to do. It could be actual educational ones, maybe closer to one of the Weinstein brothers, or a Jordan Peterson in one of those veins, or it could be someone like a Joey Diaz, like I referred to earlier, where it's more life lessons. And every person, it would be free to open, because it'd be free to source. The resources are already there. All you'd be doing is directing them to someone somewhere like YouTube with a list of watching materials. And then if you wanted to expand it past that, where you wanted to have some way of checking that you're taking in the information, you wanted to add test questions to it, you could do that too. But I think you could eventually get it. I feel like I went through such a metamorphosis and I learned so much, and I saw so much growth of myself as a person throughout that we would start to see the results of that. And the results would speak for themselves in terms of, it doesn't matter the worth of a degree. If you get a degree from Harvard, say, it should be, the degree shouldn't matter. It's what you come out and do after the fact, right? And the change you go through and what it brings in you. And I feel like this would be the perfect spot, because if you had someone like yourself that, you picked your top 50, if people listen to you and admire what you had to say and put stock in your
Mm-hmm.
list of podcasts you listen to, and as an education tool, and you could attach whatever bells and whistles to it to give it that grandiosity and that respect that deserved to get it started. But eventually the results would start to speak for themselves. If you gave someone a list of some Joe Rogan, some David Goggins, some Jordan Pearson, Eric Weinstein, Brett Weinstein, and saw who they were after, if they actually took in the information, I think I would challenge anybody to not listen to a certain select one. And you could do any sort of mix. I can probably make up 1,000 different playlists that would change people for the better, and those results would start speaking for themselves. And there's so many people that learn differently. As an educator, I'm sure you know this, some people are visual learners. We some people learn really well with facts and memorization. Everyone's different. But can you imagine the type of learning someone, maybe someone that's dyslexic, that textbooks are just not for them, but they could watch videos for hours at a time. And then you have the ability to speed them up, and you can start upping the amount of content. Your brain can process a much faster rate of speaking than the traditional tone of whatever we speak at, however many words per minute. Our brains are much more powerful than that. We can take in content. That's one of the things I love your Instagram videos, but I'm so anal about how much content intake I'm taking. The fact that I can't speed it up to 2 or 3 times just bugs the hell out of me. I can't get to it, right? Like, I almost wish I could take your Instagram stories and put them on a YouTube video so I could just speed them up after. And that's a skill you have to learn. You don't start out cranking something up to 3 and thinking your brain can. You start at 1.25.
Yeah.
And you go up to 1.5. But if you are doing a course load of it, you could add that into your goals and see how fast you get. And everybody's different. Everyone has I'm sure there's a cap to everybody's brains and how they process that, right? And even for myself, sometimes if I'm listening to a really high level, Eric Weinstein theory of everything lecture, I can't turn that up to 2. I got to go 1.5 or something. But I just think there's so many untapped resources and so many people that we could do. And I just think it's something I just came up with a few weeks ago, and I was finding the right person to speak to. But I want to, maybe I'm the first one to do it, and I start creating my list of podcasts to listen to, and see if someone else wanted to take that on in their life and listen to them, see what aspect that had on them. But I think getting more people that have a courageousness like yourself to start putting those together, because I feel like that's what we need. The courageousness and the willingness, that's what's missing. That's what's missing from the education system. So if you have those people be the start of of that change in them to show what brings that out in themselves, that's a great place to start.
Yeah.
What do you think of that idea?
Yeah,
There's a lot to take in.
You're fast. Like you're a fast. Are you? Do you live in a city?
No, I live in. I grew up in rural Alberta, but I think where that comes from is just my whole life. I felt like I was never listened to, and when I could get it in, I would get it in. And I was always the youngest, and no one ever wanted to listen to me. So if I get someone's attention, I'm going and I'm getting my points out because it always felt like I got walked on all the time.
Yeah, sometimes I think I'm faster, like a Ben Shapiro. I think you got him beat. But no, I like the idea. I think that this has been going on forever, which is like when you find someone you admire, you say like, "What are your favorite books?" Because
right.
How did you get here? I do my Instagram stories, and a lot of what that is just like it's my process. So it's like what I'm listening to. When I listen to a podcast, I almost always, not always, but often talk about it in my stories. Take a little clip that stands out to me. And that's for me too. It's like if I make a clip and edit it down and put it on my stories, then it'll help me remember it. So it's really just like bring you into, like I said, I'm showing all my cards. So here's what I think. Here's where I stand on all these issues. You can ask me about every issue, and I'll just tell you where I'm at. And so I think the idea of like, wow, I really admire this person. What got them there? What are the books that really got you there? And for me, it's also like a lot of it's books and podcasts. Like I just read this book lately, the Obstacle is the Way, the Ryan Holiday book, and like Stoicism. I was like, that was really impactful. So like there's that, and there's Carol Dweck's book Mindset was big for me. Jonathan Haidt's book, Righteous Mind, but it's more podcasts. So it's Joe Rogan's podcast, but not all of them. His podcast with Jordan Peterson, with Eric Weinstein. Naval Ravikant was a great one. Terry Crews, when he was on Tim Ferriss's podcast, was a great one. Like there are these certain like podcasts that stand out. And I think having a list when you go, this is someone I really admire. What helped you get here? And it's going to be a mix of things. It's going to be a mix of personal experiences too. Because like a specific conversation that I had with one kid at one point, 8 years ago, changed my life. You know what I mean? Like, so there's like, I guess reflecting back on like, here's where I'm at. Why? Well, there's a million different things, different like stimuli that got you here. But what are the big, like the core memories? Like if you watch that movie with my kids, what is it? I forget.
I know, Inside Out.
Yeah.
I knew where you're going.
Those that were like that experience is going to change the way I approach XYZ. So with all the stuff with systemic racism, I've been all over the spectrum. Like, is systemic racism real? Is it not? And I had a couple of conversations with someone, and one of my friends, a former colleague and former neighbor of mine, black dude from Indiana, he was on my second podcast I did. And he, explained it to me in a way just like, and we have conversations all the time. I've had dozens of hours of conversation with him, but he explained just in one point, and it wasn't even what he said. It's what he said led me to something else, and it like clicked. I was like, oh, I get it now. I was like, why has that not been explained? So I was like, let me get it. I made a YouTube video. Like, so I think that the idea of that is great, especially for higher education. You look at people you admire, or something like that, and you go, because it's not just what that will do, their list, but it'll get you to maybe your version. You'll take that and go somewhere else that will be really good. So I think it's we just let's use every medium we have. It's not just classics, but it's the classics too. But
of course,
I think is awesome because it's nuanced. It's complex, and you kind of. I think that you just have to kind of go through and log them somehow. I think is a great idea. Yeah.
And I think the basis of that, of what it came to, is just, I feel like there's so much power in the long form. That's why I do such long podcasts, and the Joe Rogan, that's where I saw that come to effect. There's certain things that people want to talk about, but you almost need 2 hours to couch it and all these things these days, right? Unless you're someone like yourself that just has the courage to do away with all that, have the trust in their own core values that they have that. But I think a lot of it is just about, if you want to talk about systemic racism, you almost need to do an hour of, I'm not racist. I think I have, you do all these equating to make sure that people don't think of you a certain way, just so you can get into it and have a discussion on the topic. Right. And I feel like that is what's so powerful about the long form, and what got me to that way of thinking of how can we, leverage this power of the long form back into education in a more formal setting. But I do think also, you could do some lectures, a powerful lecture. Like I think if I was to make my own, I think even though 99.9% of people will only take maybe 3% out of it, I think Eric Weinstein's lecture when he first put out his theory of everything, I only took a little bit out of that, but it changed my life. It was just that ground shaking moment of reality as we know it may not be what it is something, right? And it's not a podcast, it's a different medium. And I think, yeah, like you say, your favorite books, putting those are important. And I think just having it someone where one individual, unless it's not a university, it's not some sort of corporation or an education board putting it together, it's one person that you respect and what's meaningful to them, whatever form that takes. That's more about the idea. I think that's the more heart of the idea that I'm going for. And just what are the aspects that make you that you think other people could benefit from? And then once you put that together in some sort of solid base that people could then follow and see what that does for them, now you start to see results of it and you can start to see the power of it, right? And I think that's what I think is so special about that. And I think going on that, and the two spaces that I thought this power of long form needs to come back into society, because with phones and social media, we've lost it for the most part. Joe Rogan might be the only time that, a good chunk of the world here's a 3-hour conversation, right? Probably since for years, there might be people that have gone decades without hearing that unless it's a podcast, right? And the other place I was thinking is politics. Where else would long form be more necessary than, where politics are fought on CNN or debates where it's quick back and forth. You don't go past the first level, right?
Well, that's by design, because like Kamala Harris just went out and did a press conference. She didn't answer questions. So 100%. What we want to do is, look, I mean, the Lincoln Douglas debates were like, it was like 3 hours. Lincoln talked for like 3 hours. Then Douglas talked for 3 hours. And then they took a break and then they came back and they both didn't know. I mean, it was like, that's what it should be. This idea of like sound bites. Every guy gets 4 minutes. We get that. It doesn't make sense, but it's by design. So that's why politicians do the politician thing, which is like, I am for people. And because it's a way to get the influence, the peddlers, the big powerful kind of peddlers, people who are gonna take money and have compromised morals into those positions. Because if you give them, it's the same way that I deal with like racists and stuff like that. Like I had a lot of people, like several educators on my, that I invited on my podcasts. They said, I can't believe that you would have James Lindsay on or something like that.
Right.
I said, I would have a Grand Wizard of the KKK on. And that's all I need to hear. You're out. And, meanwhile, I did one with Daryl Davis, who talked to the Grand Wizard of the KKK. And
wow.
The point is I think racism is what you do is you give them a bigger platform because their ideas are so terrible. And you open them up, not just a platform, not like you must hear me speak, but I'm going to speak my ideas. And I'm going to open it up and I will answer every question. Like do that to the Grand Wizard and see if, and put it out to the public and see if the public goes, he's got great ideas. Yes, let's spread racism. It'll be the opposite. Good ideas hold up to scrutiny. Bad ideas don't. And so I'll put a comment on like Sean King or Candace Owens' page or something. And then someone will come after me and I'll just say, let's do an hour on Instagram Live. And they want to stay in the comment section. Because, again, just like we started this off with, like, glad if you can convince me that Candace Owens is amazing and really good for the country. Okay, cool. Well, I want someone who's good for the country to be getting more popular. Like, if you can convince me that Kamala Harris is wonderful for the country, that'll relieve me of anxiety.
Yeah, exactly. We should all be hoping for that.
Right. Like, but that's by design. That's why
100%.
We need to sit back and we need to consume this long form. But instead, we're binge watching Netflix, which really nothing's happening on Netflix. Like a Netflix show is different than, I think Ryan Holler was talking about this on the Portal podcast. But it's like shows used to have to keep you ready to like, okay, I gotta wait a week now to get to the next bit of like keep you on edge. So it had to be good. Netflix, you don't. It just has to be good enough for you not to turn it off. Yeah. And people will just kind of stay in there. They'll be lulled into this nonsense, and it'll be a 12-hour show where really only like an hour worth of things happen. And that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of what's going on. Meanwhile, like we should be doing 12 hours of important stuff. But what I am as a teacher, what it does is it puts me in a very unique place compared to the people of like the intellectual dark web. So
Right.
I want to share this with you, Nick, because I haven't really talked about this openly, but I think this is getting to the core of why, even though my like follow, I don't want to follow that, I don't know, whoever like relates to what I'm doing, they're
Mm-hmm.
very like into it, but it's not big. And I think, but the reason why I think it is successful to the degree that it is because all of these really smart people, whether it's John McWhorter or Jordan Peterson or Joe Rogan or Sam Harris or Coleman Hughes or
Mm-hmm.
like whoever, Ayaan Hirsi
Yeah.
Ali, they're not K through 12 teachers. They didn't teach in East LA like I did, where
Mm-hmm.
you have a minute to get these kids' attention. And if you don't, they are out. So
Yeah.
what I see a job of a teacher, a K through 12 teacher is you take complex issues and you translate them into short, exciting, easily digestible bits.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm doing. And that's why I think it's working to the degree that it is. That even someone who can speak in a very like kind of simple way, like Joe Rogan, still he's a stand-up comedian, so he kind of has to do the same thing where he has to keep their attention while he's on stage. So it's
Mm-hmm.
probably actually similar. Is
Yeah.
Yeah, actually it's very similar to a teacher, right? Like he gets on
Yeah,
stage.
that was the first thing when you said you needed a minute. I was going to say that sounds like Joe Rogan and famous comedians. You get 2 minutes, and then if you don't have them hooked, you're hooped, right?
Yeah, he has to keep it going because he has to keep it interesting because I don't care if the biggest star in the world, if Tom Cruise gets on stage at the Comedy Store, people give him about 2 minutes and they're like, make me laugh. I've seen a
Yeah.
bunch of Russell Peters and a bunch of other people like bomb on stage when they're testing out material and people
Mm-hmm.
are just ugh. Like you gotta be sharp. So
Yeah.
that's probably why Joe Rogan is so successful. It's because he's good. I mean, there's a bunch of reasons. He's open minded, but he's also he got to keep your attention going. I would rather
Mm-hmm.
listen to 3 hours of Eric Weinstein on Joe than 3 hours of Eric Weinstein on Eric Weinstein podcast.
Really?
I
Yeah,
would.
and I would too, and I think, and I think he's the biggest entryway because he can hold attention, and I think you're right. I think once you fall in love with who Eric Weinstein is, you can listen to him on his own. But I feel like that's the entry. But I feel like I never would have got into Eric Weinstein without Joe Rogan, right? He's that perfect entry point into for all these people. And I was trying to introduce somebody to Brett Weinstein this morning actually, and I said, well, just listen to him on Joe, see if you can, and then I promise you, if you listen to his ideas, you will be impressed, right? And I just think it's so nice to have that jumping off point for these bigger intellects that are not very easily digestible, like you're saying.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that's where I think if there's anyone that has less of attention span than an audience at a stand up comedy show, it would be teenagers.
For sure.
That's probably what is I've been training to get out information to people that where they can understand it my whole life.
Yeah.
So that's what I see the job of a teacher is we're not the experts. We should be the translators.
Mm-hmm. And not to derail where we're going, but you had put me right onto the point where I was trying to make it when you're saying the format is done on purpose, right? Those quick debate theories. When I was talking about politics and the power of long form, and that was something that was so troubling to me is how can we have this? It's so clear that, and I think Joe Rogan is the reason that got me to see it. He's the most powerful media source in the world right now. If people don't understand that, they're just kidding themselves. Why is that not being done in politics? If he's the S tier of communication, how do we not have that from the people we need the most clear and concise communication from? The political class, right? So I was thinking, how is that disconnect there? And there was a couple other things I was thinking, how can we not have a two person tag team at least? I know, Joe Rogan's idea of getting a council of a bunch of people to run a country, it's too much change for people to jump on board with, but two could be, reasonable. And then goddamn Brett Weinstein comes out with this Unity 2020, and I feel like just the last couple of weeks, and every time he ramps up, he brings it to the next level. Have you watched any of his the Unity 2020 campfires?
I watched the first one with Eric, and then I had to do something with my kids. So the one with John Wood Jr. I didn't get to see, but I'm part of the Slack, and I'm trying to get involved with it somehow and trying to put it out there. But again, it's how we were saying. It's like I think Brett was talking about this in Joe Rogan, like that dream where he's trying to hit the bell and it's not making a
Mm-hmm.
sound, trying to scream and there's just nothing coming out.
Mm-hmm.
People don't people don't want it. People like being in the Matrix.
Yeah, they like the easy path. I think it goes back to right how we started this conversation. If there's an easy path there, people will take it. But I think it is a beautiful roadmap for a different way. And I think watching these campfires, what they are is they've brought the long form conversation into politics. They're having political conversations, and it's 2020. It's like, how can we be still using this old system when we have this technology? So they have live voting that are updated, right? So from the first campfire to the second campfire, they really dial that in and get, they ask questions and have the people vote on it, and that educates the discussion. How can we not do that with our politicians? And I feel like that's what they're escalating it to. And you can see the way they're going. They're starting it slow and keeping it just entertaining with the people they have on, right? Keeping it almost on purpose. They're keeping it as an arbitrary idea. And Eric in the first campfire kept referring to this, of how it's important to keep it as arbitrary, but you can see the direction they're going. And I think it's just so beautiful to see. It's almost the modern day evolution of what democracy should be if we weren't tied to a system, right? If we had the freedom just to have, put some really smart intellects together and come up, well, what's the best way with technology that we have it? Could we bring this long form? How could we bring people in to vote? And it just seems like it's a natural progression of it. And I just love to watch it. I'm not going to say it's going to work, or they're going to, get somebody into the, undermine the debate process if this is a better way, but it sure is a nice to know that as a Canadian with, a slightly different political spectrum, right? You guys have the next vote coming up, and then Canada, and then 2024, right? So we have that little space in between. So the way I'm looking at it is, this is a beautiful idea, if you keep it in the arbitrary, that can be now expressed in different elections going forward, and tweaked and formed into what we want it to be, right? Because there's that aspect of voting and having the voice of the people heard, and actually shaping what this grows into. It's by the people for the people. That's just so amazing to me to see what it can become. And I'm so hopeful. And I feel like that's been the last couple of weeks that's just given me so much hope. And I feel like it was in a really dark place with all these of just, there's no other option. I'm not a big fan of Trump, and I'm not a big fan of Biden, and I'm not, and honestly, that's irrelevant to me. I'm not a fan of the parties and the power institutions behind them. That's more what scares me personally. But just to see a third option here, and the fact that any third option would be good right now, but such a beautiful and democratic, like in the real sense of the word, right? The democratic process of what you want it to be. It's such a beautiful manifestation of that. In my opinion, I just think it's a powerful one. And I think it's very important to spread it as much as you can, right? My podcast doesn't get out to very many people, and obviously I'm in Canada, so probably barely any Americans listening to it. But even still, it's such a powerful idea that I feel like it warrants conversation.
I'm with you. My wife loves like musicals, so we watch musicals, and we watch Hamilton with my kids, and what it feels like is, I teach U.S. history, so like what it feels like is like revolution times, and
yes.
But it's not what people don't seem to get is it's not us versus Trump. Trump's not the King George.
No,
Biden's Biden. They're in it together. Like
100%.
Yeah, it's that, and it's not American. And the problem with Unity 2020 is I was watching the campfire, and there was like 2,500 people watching. It's just there's just not, what you need is you need people who have the power to get people out. Joe Rogan's interesting because he is at the same time extremely famous and popular and important, and also not mainstream. Like, how is that possible? Like, he had Robert Downey Jr. on, but Robert Downey Jr. he was on. They talked about like some fun stuff, and he'll have Post Malone on, talk shit, and just like that kind of stuff. But it's like Hollywood stars want to be cool in the cool kids club, because Rogan is in the cool kids club, but not really in the cool kids club, because in the cool kids club they smoke cigarettes and ditch school and drive fast, and you don't want to do that because it's dangerous. So you want to be seen by the cool kids club and be like periphery where the Cool Kids Club says, hey, how you doing? But you're too scared to put yourself out there. And that's what Unity 2020 feels like. Tom Bilyeu, I don't know if you know who he is. He's like a
I don't.
personal development guy. He does this thing called impact theory. He created like Quest, like nutrition bars and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Guy, he has like a podcast and like YouTube and stuff like that. But he had on Eric and then Brett Weinstein to talk about Unity 2020. And he's in like the personal development space, and which is very woke and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that I wrote to him. He didn't get back to me because I don't, he's busy or whatever. But like, that shows courage. I mean, that like for me to put myself out there to whatever my followers are and risk, like I'm not risking much. My wife makes a good living. My job met in a very unique education situation where my administration is like, keep doing your thing. Mm-hmm. But if you're Dwayne Johnson and you support Unity 2020, you could risk a lot, but they kind of need that. They need, look, if they get LeBron, Dwayne Johnson, and Cardi B on board, they would win the presidency. And that was a scary thing because these people should not, I love Dwayne Johnson. He went to my high school and stuff, but like he shouldn't have that much power. He really shouldn't. Like the power that, Kylie Jenner has, like, if she says, I went to this restaurant and it was disgusting food, that the owners of that restaurant lost their business. She says, I went to this restaurant, great food, they became millionaires. It's too much power for Kylie Jenner. She didn't, the internet is it's a hack. And the problem with taking the shortcut is you didn't do the grind of the ups and downs that the trail is supposed to have. But I think Unity 2020, by taking the high road, is missing all the people who kind of hack the system, as Donald Trump did, to get to where they're at. But they need it. They can't do it without someone who's going to tap into them. Like Tulsi Gabbard, I just had a conversation about this. People who don't like Tulsi Gabbard, I've asked them why, and they don't have an answer. They either say, I don't know anything about her, or they say she's a Russian plant.
Yeah. Whatever the typical story is.
Not like something blatantly false, or you're not like, she's an interesting one because she would talk to anybody that'll have her. She'll go on Fox News, she'll go on MSNBC, she'll go on Joe Rogan, she'll talk to Jocko Willing. And she seems level-headed. She's a soldier. She's a woman of color. I met her and she was incredibly complimentary to me, like about what I'm doing and everything like that. And it's like she seems to be on the path, but she is not. She is part of King. She is not part of King George III. She's not.
Right.
She's the traitor to the crown. So they shut her up. She was never in the running for vice president. And it's very interesting. It's not even about her. I like her, but like, it's not even about her. It's just about like, if you don't toe that line, you are out. But if she would have toed the line, she'd probably be the vice president.
Right.
Obviously, she smashed Kamala Harris. Smashed her.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, but so I just think I use her as like almost like a case study about what's going on. It's not even about Tulsi. It's just about like someone like Tulsi who would probably be excellent, even with the things that I would disagree with her on. Like I think she would handle it very well. But it's like people like that are not welcome. So we have to disrupt the system. We have to, and that's what 2020 is. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's, but I feel like I want to run a few things by you on that because I feel like you might be missing a few things that. I think the brain power behind Unity 2020 is a lot smarter, and I think you're not giving it enough credit. I think so much of this is tactical. I think if you try, they released this idea and then it seemed like nothing happened. And that was something that bugged me. It was like, okay, that was on Joe Rogan, I'm right behind you, and then nothing happened. But I think that's on purpose. I think there's so many things at play. And like you say, a Tulsi Gabbard would be perfect, but there's no way because like we said, it's not the leaders of the party that's the issue. It's the parties themselves that won't let them. A Tulsi Gabbard could never be the right. We saw Bernie was almost that person, right? And they, look at how they treated him, right? They made sure he didn't get there, right? There's issues to it.
Yeah.
So I think it's all about timing, and I think it's all on purpose. And I think if you started too early and it got too much power too quick with enough time before the election, they have all this time to tear it down. And I think that is what. What's that?
I think they're going to drop it right before.
I think it's a slow bit. I think it's a timed build. I think they could have done this right. I can't remember when Brett went on Joe Rogan and kind of first put the idea out, but it was early summer maybe. And they didn't do anything because that was too early, right? It was to get the idea percolating and to get it into the zeitgeist. Now they're starting with these campfires 2-3 months out. And like you said, it's this beautiful idea. And I had the same thought as you, but there's only, 10,000 people on here, right? That they're voting and stuff, but that's not representative. It doesn't do it. I think that's on purpose because like you say, it does need that big push. It does need that big name. But as soon as you attach it, now you get all that other crap that comes with it. But when it's just those core people, those patriotic patriots that are so sick of the system and have woken up already, and they're involved at the start doing these early voting systems that only has these people that really care about it and aren't just in it for the rocks of the world. The people that would vote for the rock are not the people that are in it right now. And this is when they're doing the work and picking the candidates and doing the work with these people. And then eventually when they have that point, that's when I believe they're going to make another trip onto Joe Rogan and blow it up big once they have it established and have it when there's less time for them to tear down whoever they pick. If they picked, because that's what everyone's saying. They kept putting these polls up saying, what would it take you to jump on board with Unity 2020 right now? What's your biggest hang up? But the number one thing was candidates. Who's your candidates? But if they put candidates out, it lets them tear them down. There's these giant monoliths on both sides of the aisle that have done for hundreds of years, tearing down the people they don't want and put the people in place. They have these huge systems for tearing them down. If they put them in right now, they have that opportunity. If you wait a little bit of time and it's that perfect balancing act, so you go too late and now you don't have enough time to get that groundswell that it requires. And it's all a game, and it needs to get to a certain level of respect and it has to take enough of a bite out of the political process itself, even if it fails, for it to stand as an idea and to be able to be studied. But I feel like because it's the first one and it's the first strike at it, it's them playing that game. And I don't think Brett or Eric or Heather are dumb people by any means. And I think they're incredibly smart and have been thinking about this for years. And this is probably a plan they've had for a long time. And I think you need to give it more credit of maybe some of these things aren't, their feature's not a bug. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like that is something that's typical out of their mouths all the time. They always talk about features, not bugs, bugs, not features. And I think this is one of those cases where a lot of those things you were kind of leading to, of course they need a big push. They need some big names, and that brings in all that stuff of just people wanting to vote for The Rock. And that there's a time for that, and they're going to need it. It's just not now. Right. What they need now is those that are patriotic that are going to come to them, right? If you go screaming for people to come to you, you're not going to get the right kind of people that need to be helping making these kind of decisions. You're getting the people, like you said on your podcast, it's not a huge group that are fun, but they're passionate and they care and they want to have these discussions, that are willing to sit down for 3 hours or an hour at a time, hop on a live, right? They're willing to defend their decisions. You don't want people, having a vote if they're not willing to defend their decision. But that's always that's always the crux of democracy, right? You want to give everyone a vote, but you don't want people to throw away their votes. How do you ever solve that? I feel like this is a sneaky way. It's a quiet revolution almost. That's the way I see it. Because I feel like until Unity 2020, my only thought, and I don't want people to take this the wrong way, because I'm a huge, love and compassion guy. But I thought, violent revolution is the only way I see that ever changing in the States. And I'm Canadian, completely out of the fight. But I feel like, how else would you ever take down? There's no way. They're too entrenched for anything to ever change. And I feel like this is that the only ever solution I've ever heard for a non-violent revolution that seems theoretically, in theory, it can work, right? Those timings I explained to you, I think if you really thought about it, and maybe after this, I know I don't want to keep you too long, but that's why I knew we'd talk for a long time, because I feel like there's ways I feel like I could convince you, because I feel like you are open, and that's what I'm looking for, is people that are open to, because I think when you get down to it, there is a lot more to this idea than it thinks. I think it looks a lot more abstract and a lot more ethereal than it actually is, but I think that's on purpose. What do you think of that?
I'm enjoying the conversation. How about let's say another 20 minutes?
Sure, sounds good. Yeah, whatever you got. I'm just happy you're here.
No, that would be great. Look, going back to what we said, I hope you're right.
Yeah.
And
I knew you would. That's why I wanted to have you on.
So here's what I would if I was in charge of everything. What I would like is I would like to write down a list of who would be and I guess this is probably what they're doing. I'm guessing, because they're smarter than me. So I'm guessing they're sitting down you want to hit all these different points. Who are the people that we will bring on board that will bring their following? So let's say right. Rogan would be one. Okay. Let's say if they get Jocko on board or a David Goggins on board, a David Goggins would probably be a huge one, or a Tim Kennedy, or someone who's a hardcore military, tough but also like very reasonable person,
Mm-hmm.
and then you get someone from like the really progressive. So like Andrew Yang
Mm-hmm.
is a following among like really woke people.
Yep.
And then so I'm going to try and do like bang, like you want to try and hit like at my camera, like so like like these different spots, and then
Yeah.
they have these little ground swells, and then the ground swells. So it's like that's the join or die, the American thing of the
Mm-hmm.
snake, right? Or if you look at like a dollar bill, like one of the things, I don't know if it was Patrick Henry or someone, they stood up to the 13 colonies and he grabbed an arrow and he snapped it, and he said, alone it's weak, but if you grab 13, he said, if we're in this together, you can't do it. And that's why the eagle on the dollar bill has the 13 arrows, and that's the whole flag idea. And the unity has to be people on the left, people on the right. That's what he said about the candidates. But I think even among, gross term, but influencers, you have to get influencers, get someone who's from generation, from like millennial or generation Z, a Kylie Jenner or someone like that, someone who's going to stand up and be like, you know what, this two-party thing this sucks, let's get some reasonable smart people in there, vote for them, Cardi B. Like, you have to get someone from that realm too. Like if you get those points, then you get 13, let's say 13 influencers, you get 13 influencers, it would win the presidency.
Yeah,
I believe that. But that's a lot of power for a celebrity, which is again a really weird thing. People say that one of the number one things that young people want to be, when you say, what do you want to be when you grow up, they say famous. And I've talked to my wife has done eyebrows of like people who have like 20 million followers on Instagram, and I'm like, I kind of want to like talk to them and like get my hooks in. And my wife's like, I understand, but what you should need to understand is like the reason they have 20 million is they're not serious. They fall over on Instagram and people go, ha ha ha, because they like being programmed. They like just like not thinking. So to all of a sudden come out and be like, hey, this duopoly is really bad for systemic issues. People would just be like, wait, who are you? Like, no, I'm out. And then that's their livelihood. But that's the courage. The courage is, being scared of the fire and going in anyway. And so you have to convince them that this is good to do, which I don't think is that hard if you just pay attention. But then you have to convince them that it's worth risking everything you've worked really hard to build. And if you can do that, I think like 13 people could win the presidency if they all get high. If we're very strategic about what 13 it is.
And I think you hit it right on the head, because one of the other questions they kept asking was, what would it take you to jump on unity? And the other one they were asking is, I forgot where I was going with that. Anyways, I got another point that I wanted to get to. I think you're right with that. And I think it's a big theory in comedy that keeps getting passed around in the comedy podcast circle about all these comedians are always looking for this big thing that hooks them in, right? Bill Burr had his rant in Philly. Joe Rogan had his Mencia thing, and Andrew Schultz is putting his content up on YouTube now. He's the fastest growing comedian. He's probably the best comedian going right now. And he's in terms of, using modern methods, there's no one even close. But what they
Unity 2020, by the way.
What's that?
Schultz would align with Unity 2020. He's all about taking elites. Yeah.
100%. But what they always talk about is then you hear these other comics that say, well, I've had big moments and nothing happened, right? I had a video go viral and nothing happened. It's because you need to have a base of content of that gives something for people to go back to, right? It has to be real. If you don't have, a bunch of content, if you have one video go viral, but you don't have a catalog for people to jump back into and see what you're about, and it has to come from the right place. I feel like that's the difference with these, where you could say, influencers would just jump onto something and it doesn't matter because it's a whim and they go either way. I think with this, because it comes from such a real place, it is patriotic. It is coming from something that ties into that natural ethos and is true to the people that are starting. It's true to what they believe. It's true. It comes from that patriotism. And I know it's funny for a Canadian to see, but I feel like one of my favorite things about America is the patriotism that you see. And I think that's what it's going to tap into. And I feel like if you can have someone like an Andrew Schultz, just because he'd be like you say, he'd be a huge, or Joe Rogan, all it's going to take is for them to direct them to check it out. And then there's real substance there, right? It is such a good idea, and it comes from such a pure place, and there's so much behind it that I feel like if we can start to direct people to them and get them to understand it, they will buy in. And I feel like that's the power of it. It's not directing them to some, flimsy platform with actual no plan in place. I think there actually is some, really powerful minds behind this. And if people get behind it, they're going to see that. And as it rolls out and as it gains steam, I think that will become more and more apparent, because as it gains steam and they can get access to the next levels and the next, now if you can get, there's only maybe 10,000 people watching these campfires, but you can get, 100,000, 200,000 people on there. And now it starts to brush up against those other circles of more mainstream things. And now you force maybe some of these other candidates. Oh, so now just say Andrew Yang and Jocko, just for ease of use, just to have placeholders. But like we say, arbitrary is probably the more salient route at this point. If you have them there and they can do long form, they can do 3 hours, they're at a huge advantage. That's what people want. People don't want to be lied to. They're sick of this 5-minute clips and everything being cut up and lied to. But it's so much dishonesty, everything around, that you can't lie in 3 hours. If you're on for 3 hours, you have to be true to who you are. And I feel like if they can show that, even if they don't win, if they show that that's what the public wants and that's what we expect, it's almost an expectation that I feel like, how can you be a politician and not have that and not be able to do that, right? I feel like that's almost what's more important than anything, is just bringing it's the power of long form and inserting that in. And I feel like this is a great way to do it. But almost more important than the idea itself, this election in isolation, I feel like it's the power of bringing long form conversation back into multiple areas, right? Education, politics, all these areas. But just it's such a revolutionary. Oh, that's what it was. That was the other question they kept asking the public in different forms. I found was, is this a revolutionary moment? Right. And then what you were saying about, are you willing to risk everything for this at this moment? Is this the time? And I feel like that's Eric's big hang up, where he's not, and he even admitted on the first campfire, he's kind of coming around to it. He doesn't know if this is that moment, but I don't think that's up to one person to decide. I feel like you have to give people that option and let them decide. Is this a revolutionary moment? Do you think this is? And I feel like it's been a revolutionary moment for so long. People just don't realize it because they don't realize the boot that they're under.
I don't think it is. I'm actually with Eric on this one. But what's sad, and especially being a parent and everything like that, is I think it has to get bad first. And
right.
It's like that meme. It's like, bad times make strong men make good times make and weak men make bad times. Like,
yeah.
I think it had, like, so COVID hit and things aren't that bad. Like, they're like, people are not killing their neighbors for food. You know what I mean? Like, so we're just inflating the money supply. Let's give people money, printing money. Yeah. Again, just like I said before, this is something my 3-year-old would say, hey, we're running low on money in the country. What do we do? He would be like, print more money. It's like, yeah. Like, so, but when the dollar collapses, like when the mobs that were walking down Beverly Hills, I have friends in Beverly Hills, and they were like, hey man, like really woke friends. They're like, can I borrow a gun? And I was like, what? No, you've been making fun of me for having guns. He's like, well, it's scary. They're walking down the street yelling, eat the rich. I was like, yeah, but they're on the other side of the wall. Once they jump over the wall, I think things are too good still. I do. I mean, I see homeless people in LA all the time talking on their cell phone, rooting through garbage. Like, I think that when things get bad, then they're going to push for a revolution. I think that, and it's so sad. Like, you see it, like you see the train and you're like, hey, the bridge is out. The bridge is out, guys. Like, let's stop the train because the bridge is out. And people are just like, nah, I'm comfortable. I'm in a train. I'm going somewhere. And I again, this is one that I would love to be wrong. There is no better, like, you were wrong on that one, Mr. Reusch, than I was thinking like my students. Then the call of, like, things have to get really bad first. Like, it has to be like, we're buckled down. I have my shotgun next to my bed in the suburbs. And I hope that's wrong. I really do.
Right. And I totally get where you're coming from on that. But the way I look at it is almost what you just described to me is almost what makes it revolutionary to me, because I feel like we are getting tenuously close to that. I feel like all it would take is one big thing right now, because tensions are so high. And I feel like the issue, people like to pretend it's an issue of when things go bad, if something does happen, right? A volcano blows, whatever that next step is, do you want Trump or Biden in charge? I feel like you're not thinking of it deeply enough. Do you want whoever's in charge, that the puppet that's being controlled by corporates that just want to make money and don't have any of the cares of the people in place during an actual, right? We got a small taste of it during COVID was a global issue with people in charge that didn't actually have the cares of the people. They just had corporate funds and the military industrial complex. That's who's really controlling the people at the top. That is what makes me so scared of. We don't have the time to wait, because now it's December 1st. We've already made up our minds and we've lost our opportunity of unity, and then that change happens. And I feel like what scares me so much as a Canadian is we're so tied to America. What happens in America happens in Canada. We're inextricably linked. And what I see down there is just this: Trump will say things he knows will get clipped out. He couches it in a somewhat rational, pretext and what comes before and comes after. But he knows if he says something really, really risky in the middle, they're going to cut it out. Just put that in the news headlines, and then he knows the reaction from the other side will be so harsh against it that he can just go, "Oh, look at these guys, they're lying. This is fake news." And it's just this constant battle of the left can't see that he's doing it on purpose, and they are inflating and making hate and anger, and he's just giving them the fodder to do it back and forth. And it's just creating, when you look at the gun sales that are going up, and then you lock people in their houses, it's just a powder keg that I see being built up that scares me. And I feel like Canada is doing so much better with so many of these issues that we talk about. Not perfect by any means, and that's why I feel like I'm excited about this, because it could be another third option for us when we come to our next election. But I just feel like it's such a radical time that we're on such a razor's edge. We, as a world, we're on a razor's edge, right? America is the leader of the free world, whether you like it or not, still at this point, and that may be heading in a different direction. But if shit pops off there and it starts people fighting and they're just stirring up more hatred and more, instead of love and compassion and uniting, which is what I love in your message all the time. It starts from that. And Joe Rogan and all these people, and that's all the people I love, have that core of, love and compassion and the human race instead of just race. Like we are a race, you know what I mean? And that's what makes it that revolutionary moment for me. Almost the same arguments you made are the same arguments I make to why it is revolutionary to me.
Yeah. I mean, or China, like who knows what's going on with China. I
Oh.
did a podcast on China. I don't know if you heard it. It freaked me out though, man. Like,
Yeah,
that's a really scary thing too. So, I hope that I'm wrong, and I hope that, but I'm with you. I'm 100% in agreement that let's put out the match before it hits the powder keg.
exactly.
The powder keg has been building since like the early 1970s, and it's not going to change, unless we really change the way that this country is run and the way that our leadership, treats one another and everything like that. So I don't know. But,
yeah. No, and maybe just before I tie it up, I'll try and let you go, but maybe we can bring it to more positive places. Just, I think that's what's given me so much, that we're up against so much. When we look at just the last probably half hour of this conversation, we're up against so much, and to know that there's still people out there like yourself, like myself, like the people behind you that aren't giving up, aren't rolling over, aren't just going on the easy path, and are still trying, even if we don't take it and we don't jump at this opportunity, even though they're still out there trying to give that path to people that want to fight for it, like myself, that thinks is important. Just the fact that there's that opportunity out there, and there's those minds that, and I think as I do this podcast and start bringing some of these ideas forth, they come out of the woodwork, and I've gotten the most amazing messages. People are like, "Oh, is the podcast getting the downloads you want and stuff?" And I'm just, that's so not what it's about. It's the people that get it. It's not a huge amount, but I've gotten probably 10 to 15 really meaningful messages that are understanding where I'm coming from. And they say, well, I can't come out and say this stuff, but I do agree. And I'm sure you get the same thing of people just say, there's, for X or Y reason, I can't come out, but to know that there is sanity still alive within people, they're just scared to say it, really gives me hope for the future. And that maybe this isn't the solution, Unity 2020, but it's a solution, and it's setting the roadmap for future ones to build upon it. And maybe the next solution that builds upon this idea, or just the spirit of what it's about, will be that next one that brings us out of this and takes us away from this powder keg, maybe in a more definite way, not just, putting your fingers on the match for 4 years and we'll see what happens in another 4 years, right? That's what gets me, is we've done this before, right? But I think it gives me a lot of faith that there are some positive times coming, and it's not all doom and gloom.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that, we'll share audience, and then, with the technology, this will grow and grow and grow. and it is, there's a lot of just like beautiful people out there, and it's so
Hmm.
diverse too, and like all the ways one can be diverse. It feels good to be a part of, even like you said, on a small scale. Like I think that you and I and the people that listen to, the people that we listen to, and think it's on the right side of history, to
Yeah.
use that term. If you're willing to talk to people and you're willing to be a uniting voice, those are the ones who we remember in history, and
Hmm.
we memorialize. There's a reason why Martin Luther King has his holiday. There's a reason why, the founding fathers, this country, my country, was founded on,
Yeah.
this idea of compromise and talking things out. And Jefferson and Hamilton hated each other, but they worked it out because they knew that it was important. And that's really at the core of what the intellectual dark web was. And unity in
Yes.
name would be an awesome new political party unity would be.
Oh, it would be amazing. And I think what gives me a lot of hope is in 2016, long form, the power of long form was just hitting its stride, but it was a little too late at that point, right? We just missed it. And me personally, I feel like, okay, we missed it in 2016, 2020 is our time. But even if it's not, imagine what it's going to be in 2024. Look at how much growth from 2016 to 2020. Just use Joe Rogan as the kind of the apex to watch the climb of it. Look at how powerful he's gotten in that point, in based on love, compassion, reasonability, logic, and nuance. Imagine the power that is growing. 2024, I just can't wait to see where we're at with that. If this trajectory can keep going, and people like yourself can keep being courageous, and I'm gonna get there one day, and I'll be just as courageous as you, saying these ideas without having to couch them in a million different things before I can say them, right? Because I'm working on it, and this is my 15th podcast, but every one I get a little more, I'm a little more solid in my foundations, in that I am a good person. And even if someone does try and attribute something else to me, I know that that's not me, and I don't have to worry about it because it's not real. And I just, I can't thank you enough for coming on. You were one of my big gets that I was really hoping I would have on this, and I can't say thank you enough. And if you're willing, I would love to have you back on whenever you wanted, or maybe hop on Instagram live with you. I think that's a really cool idea. I'd never done it myself, but I think that's a really cool idea. And we can keep, sharpening our swords, mines are whetstones to sharpen your own sword against. If you're not doing it, you're just stagnating.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you for bringing me on. Really, like, and again, like, I think that you and I seem to align on so many things. So when you find something that you're like, wait, Will, you're off on this one, I will take it seriously, and I'll probably
Yeah.
defend it, and then you'll defend
Yeah.
and we'll come out of this maybe not being aligned, but maybe being like, oh, that's a good point, and that's
Yeah.
what this should be all about. Yeah. So thank you for having me on here. I really appreciate it. I had a good time. It was a good conversation.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. And I'm sure we'll be talking soon.
Cool. All right.
All right.
Later.
Thanks, Will.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening to episode 15. And thanks for letting me try out that little bit of a solo cast, extended intro kind of thing that I did at the start. It was really cool, and I really enjoyed doing it. I think I shouldn't have been so scared of it and should have been doing it longer, but hey, look, we're here now. So yeah, if you could if you wouldn't mind following the VonDubCast on Instagram and Twitter, that'd be a huge help. And like I say every time, you can send your feedback on either of those, or to the VonDubCast, or just VonDubCast@gmail.com. And if you want to help out with this podcast in any way, I've got it pretty well thought out, all the next steps I want to take with it. The only thing kind of holding me back is just how much time I have to dedicate. So if someone else, even with no experience, has never listened to a podcast in their life and isn't super computer savvy, I can definitely help show them what I'd like, and I have a pretty good idea of it. So pretty much all I need is some passionate manpower or physical capital in terms of labor, and I would definitely take you under my wing. And if you really wanted to commit to it, I would show you everything that I know, and help take that learning process and that journey with you. So anybody, if that strikes anybody's interesting, anybody's looking for a change and just wants to try something new, reach out and let me know about it. We'll get it figured. All right. So thanks again, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.